Hello and welcome. My name is Tapfuma Musewe. I'm the founder of Afrifursa, and it's my absolute pleasure to have with me today here Inioluwa Bankole. How are you doing, Inioluwa?
I am doing great, Tapfuma. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. Fantastic. It's a pleasure to have you. It's an absolute pleasure. So, Inioluwa, I'm really excited about this conversation today. We've been discussing for some time, for a few months now, your research, and it's really important. But just to give people who are viewing an idea of who you are personally, so you're originally from Nigeria, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Great.
Great. So how long have you been in Canada?
So I've been in Canada going on 8. I'm going to be clocking my 9th year in October, actually. So
Okay.
in a while.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And you've lived all over Canada. You've been East Coast, West Coast, somewhere in the middle now.
The only province I haven't been to is Manitoba.
Wow.
And
you're doing much better than me.
So I've lived in BC. I'm currently in Ottawa.
Oh, okay.
So I've been everywhere, and
yeah. So, but you've actually lived in a lot of these places, right?
Yes,
in a lot of these provinces. Wow,
yes,
that's amazing. Well, that's great because you recently successfully defended your master's thesis at Ryerson University. Firstly, congrats on that. How does it feel to have done that? I mean, at a time where the world is shutting down, people's plans are changing. I mean, what an accomplishment.
Thank you. Honestly, I'm so grateful to everyone that has supported me. I feel relieved to finally finished my research, and also excited for the results that I found from my research study. And honestly, I feel like it's a bittersweet experience because a part of me empathized with other graduates that didn't get to have a formal graduation ceremony after all the hard work that they put into finishing school. But also empathizing with new students that are having to navigate the intricacies of COVID and learning online. But personally, I'm glad to be done and moving on to a new chapter in my life. And just excited for what the future holds.
Okay, so before you move on to the new chapters, let's talk about the chapters that you wrote.
Yeah.
So your underlying research question was, why are Canadian senior managers overlooking or dismissing what could be lucrative opportunities in the Sub-Saharan African region? So, you've lived all over Canada and you thought this question was really important. What motivated you to pursue this?
Yeah. So, this whole research journey actually started from my undergraduate studies. And I kind of did a research on HR economics, looking at why immigrants weren't getting jobs in, positions that they were qualified for. I was reading the news and seeing, doctors coming from Africa, coming from different places that are very skilled and experienced, and having to work as taxi drivers in Canada. And for the life of me, I just couldn't understand. And as an immigrant child also, I watched my parents, struggle doing, certification exams to try to get, jobs in places that they were qualified for. So that was one of the reasons that, motivated me. And also I found out that there's little research on Africa from a business perspective. We find research on, developmental studies, on, poverty, GDP, but not enough research from international business standpoint. So I wanted to bridge that gap. And as a, Nigerian Canadian, being in different cultures, I feel like I've seen the both sides of the continent, and I just wanted to find a way to bring the two, continents together and see and identify the different gaps from an international business and trade perspective. So that was sort of what motivated me to, address this research question from
Fantastic. And as you got into it, did you find that there were any other bodies of work that addressed this topic that you could sort of use as background study or providing background data on this, or was this completely breaking into a new space?
So to some degree, there's been some research done from the standpoint of just high-level immigrant experience. One of the supervisors that I worked with, they've done a lot of research on, immigrant business, immigrant employment, immigrant exports, but there wasn't a lot that was specifically looking at Sub-Saharan Africa and, the international business trade. We had more looking at China and African relations, but not necessarily Sub-Saharan Africa and the West, which is why I really wanted to do research in this area, because I felt there was so much to uncover and so much that the West could learn from Sub-Saharan Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa is already learning from the West. So that gap just needed to be filled in, which is why I embarked on this journey.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to come back to, hearing a little bit more about what you found and what you think some of those key lessons are that need to be learned. But one of the things I found in reading your executive summary was the focus on the importance of trusted networks for Canadian CEOs.
Right.
So that, I think the way you put it was something along the lines that Canadian CEOs essentially have trusted networks that they rely on to basically qualify opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So networks typically serve as a conduit of information, right? Research has shown us that, for you to be able to get information, somebody must have told you, or you must have seen it somewhere. And the information an organization has is significantly related to the network of the organization, as well as the network of the senior decision makers in those organizations. So if those senior decision makers don't have proper information from their network, then they would be neglecting information that they could be privy to. Say, for example, if I wanted to have information about Tanzania or Ghana, right? If I don't have somebody in my network that could give me information from that, then to a large degree, there's no way I'm going to have that information. So I look at it as a circle of influence, right? First of all, when you're looking for information, you ask people that are closest to you, your family members, your friends. And if no one has that information, then you move out of that circle to ask somebody else. So that was one of the underlining themes that were coming up from this, that networks are super important, especially because of the psychic distance. And what I mean by psychic distance is how far cognitively a country is from one another, and culturally. So looking at the map, and you have Canada, and then you have let's say Nigeria, for example. They're physically distant from each other, but they're also cyclically distant in terms of the cultural norms and the way things are operated in both countries. So if you don't have a network in that country that is somebody that is also trusted to give you good information, then finding an opportunity in that country makes it very, very difficult to navigate, especially if you're not familiar with that country.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because one of the things I found, having grown up here in Canada and studied here, and then moving to South Africa and Ghana, living there for 11 years, coming back, is that when you come back into the Canadian environment, there's a big focus on data, data-driven decision making, etc. But from what you're saying, the most important factor in decision making for senior leaders and CEOs in Canada is not really empirical data, so to speak. It's people.
Right.
It's qualitative, and sometimes even anecdotal.
Right. And to just quickly jump in there, I think even at the level of senior decision makers, data is very important, but data doesn't make any sense if there's no one to make sense of it, if there's no one to interpret it. And I think for international business and trade activities, it's not enough to rely only on data. You need people behind the data to make sense of it and to actually tell you, okay, I've been there, this is how it works, this is how you navigate, the culture, this is how you navigate doing business. Because those fine details, the data cannot fully, explain or fully make sense of, like, it's difficult to make sense of it without an actual person behind it.
Okay, so perhaps the granularity of the data is what you're saying is really important. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. But something that's come out recently, here in Canada in particular, talking about data, is that there's a real lack of diversity in Canadian boardrooms, especially in some of our biggest companies. So 5.5% of our boardrooms on the TSX 60, S&P TSX 60, which is basically the 60 largest cap companies in Canada, only 5.5% of them would be visible minorities. And this is 23 companies. And this is despite the fact that 22.3% of the population in 2016, so based on the last census, is comprised of minorities. So, when you talk about CEOs, decision makers, having people within their, in close proximity to them, in relationship with them, that can help guide them into some of these markets, what does that mean, given that a lot of the key people they surround themselves with are just not reflecting these environments?
I mean, just hearing those numbers, I think it is very startling because, and I always say this to people, the issue has never been that there's no talent. The issue has never been for lack of talent. I just strongly believe that we're not looking in the right places and that we're not paying attention, to the right sources, which is kind of how the background, or I should say the back mirror for what my research is. So with this lack of diversity, yeah, I think we need to have more people, more diverse people that are being represented at a top level for those decisions to be made. Say, for example, as you said, like 5.5% visible minority. Out of those 5%, 5.5 visible minority, if we start to break it down, how many are coming from Sub-Saharan Africa? How many are coming from Pacific Asia, right? So once we start breaking down those numbers, we begin to see like it's actually small brackets of people. And we're not even sure, to what level in top management they're in. Are they really at a level where they can be influencing decisions at a very strong level, or is it just, at a very mid level? So I think it speaks a lot to how, as Canadian economy, we need to do better in terms of like ensuring that there's diversity in the boardroom so that it can trickle down into our economy, right? It can trickle down into how we do business internationally, how we do trade, and what countries we choose to do trade with.
So to your point, one of the key things that Afrifursa focuses on is diasporans like yourself. And so my question to you would be, what role do you see African diasporans playing in helping change this scenario where Canadian CEOs, senior managers and decision makers are not accessing these lucrative opportunities?
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, like, thank you so much for the work you're doing. I remember the first time I met you at the commerce event, and I feel like for African diasporans, we need to be supporting one another, right? It has to start from there. If I didn't meet you and you supported me, like at the beginning stages of my research, then I wouldn't be able to get into the point, where I am right now. So first of all, diasporans, we need to come together to help each other, support each other, push out, work. And then secondly, I think we need not to be afraid to reach for the heights. I mean, Africans generally are known to be hustlers. I'm just gonna put it out there, so we need to make sure that we are, strategic in the things that we do. We're reaching for the top. We're reaching for places where we can be influencers and makers of decisions, right? It's not just okay to be, to stay where we are, but we need to target like where we can be of most influence so that we can change the narrative. For me personally, when I realized that there wasn't enough research on Africa, I was like, okay, I want to change that. I mean, it comes with a risk of being labeled as, the African researcher, like your research is only focused on Africa. But if that's what it takes to change that status quo, then I'm willing to take that risk, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
we need to be strategic in what we do. That's where I'll leave it at for now.
Great, fantastic, and it's been a pleasure to see you develop, your passion and to help us, because the thing is that a lot of us knew what some of your research was saying, but it was very anecdotal and very difficult to have a data set that could actually back our conclusions that Africa is just undertapped, and the commercial, the trade investment potential is largely undertapped as far as Canada is concerned. But one of the other things that your research mentioned, which was really interesting, was the idea of pre-existing mental models that inform senior managers' perception of Africa. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so pre-existing mental models are basically, the initial, trying to find the right word, the initial mental perceptions, I would say, that senior managers bring when they first hear of Sub-Saharan Africa or when they first enter the market. So, for example, in my research, while I developed this model to explain how it works, I said, if you have a pre-existing mental model that Africa is a corrupt place to do business, everything will start to look corrupt to you, right? That existing model in your brain is going to cloud how you do business in that country. So the initial categorization of the business initial categorization of the senior manager matters a lot in how they pay attention to opportunities. Another example that I would give it to kind of break it down a little bit is, let's say, for example, we're at a networking event and everyone is like there to do business, exchanging business cards, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, like I'm from Africa, and I'm looking for Canadian investors that would like to partner with me." Da 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 da. If you already have in your mind that it's a corrupt place, if you already have in your mind that it takes longer to do business, and people don't get their payment on time, the first thing that comes to your mind will be those existing mental models, right? And that will prevent you from actually, listening to that person or taking them seriously, because you already have that mental models at the back of your mind.
Yeah. That's really instructive because, again, coming back to the issue of data,
right.
I think what that suggests is that there's several layers, so one of them you've mentioned is someone to actually make sense of the data.
Right.
And that might be someone within your network.
Right.
But the other thing is actually changing your person's perception so that when they see the data, they actually see it for what it is. And they actually, or allow people within their network to really help them understand the opportunities. So how do we actively play a role in helping change these mental models?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and when I say first thing, I'm speaking to Canadian senior managers right now, is you have to recognize it, right? That is the first step in actually breaking those barriers to actually seeing the opportunities. Once you can break those mental models and recognize that you bring these models as you're approaching information that is coming from your network, then it makes you makes you slow down and say, okay, what is this data actually saying? What is this opportunity actually saying? If you're telling me, Sub-Saharan African country has, 5 of the fastest growing economies in the world. So what does this actually mean for my business? Does this increase in technology, infrastructures are getting better? What does this actually mean? So it helps, senior managers slow down and not just be reactive, because once they make sense, once they're aware of the pre-existing model and they're able to make sense of the information, then it ends up leading them to not ignore the opportunities, because the opportunities have been there. Say, for example, when we look at China, Canada was really slow moving into China. And by the time we were already in the Pacific, the opportunities were already gone and we're just scrambling for the scrap. So we need to take a more proactive approach if we want to recognize opportunities in places like Sub-Saharan Africa and make sure that we're aware of the mental models that we bring into the market.
Thank you. So one of the things you said at the beginning was that, there's a lot that Canadians have to learn from Africa. And, there's a lot that Africans are already learning from Canada. And, I'm very aware as we're talking this way that these are two very asymmetric regions, right? Africa is a continent, Canada is a country. But what is one key lesson that you think is important for Canadians to learn from Africa?
Okay, there's a lot of key lessons, but I think
sure.
The first one that comes to mind is in terms of the African continent, because it has a median age of 19, like the median age is 19. It's a very young population that is very. I'm trying to look for a more refined word than hustlers. There's this vibrant spirit that is always looking to push the boundaries of business, push the boundaries of technology. Yep. And because of that spirit, I foresee 5 years, 10 years from now, there's going to be so much technology that is erupting from the African scene that the Canadian side needs to see and look. Okay, how can we not stay domiciled or laid back? How can we keep improving? Because I find in Canada we're so comfortable with just doing business with the US, right? But things are changing. The economic landscape is shifting every day, and we can't afford to remain comfortable the way we are, right? We need to be more vibrant. I don't know, for lack of a better word, more vibrant in our approach to business, in our approach to economics, in our approach to changing things. So if there's anything, Canada can learn from Africa, I would say that we should learn just more proactiveness and
completely agreed. And that's something that I also witnessed going out there as a young adult to South Africa and as well to Ghana, is just seeing that vibrancy that you're talking about. I completely get what you're talking about. The level of innovation and entrepreneurship. These are things that I didn't experience till I was immersed in it, and I caught the bug, which is why I do some of the stuff that I do. So completely agreed. Okay, so my last question for you: favorite city across the continent, and it can be for any reason. I'm not qualifying this at all, but there's one key thing, which is it has to be a city outside of Nigeria.
Oh man, okay. The funny thing, I haven't traveled well across Africa, which is very sad for me. But if I were to pick any city, where would I pick?
Could be a city that you want to travel to, that you want to see the most. Could be that.
I would pick. I would pick Accra.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I feel like they're sister to Nigeria, and I mean, sorry to all my Guinean friends out there. I think it would be a good place for me to get my toes, wet in exploring Africa. And I think they also share the vibrancy that we do in Nigeria. The food is amazing. The culture.
It's great to hear Nigerians say this about Ghana. It's fantastic.
I mean, we all need to come together and work together to make
absolutely.
Again. So I think they have such a rich culture and a rich art and history that I would love to explore as well.
Okay, well, Inioluwa, thank you so much for your time. And the work that you've done is really, really important because, again, it just provides a clear picture based on data of where Canada sits with regard to accessing opportunities across Africa. And this is something that is going to have to change for the future of Canada and for Africa's future as well, as Africa develops meaningful trade and investment partnerships, and even beyond commercial partnerships. Right. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say also thank you for all the support, and just to everyone watching and listening. We need to support each other. We need to work together to make, Africa great. Africa is great, but we need to make it, more great and better, and also Canada as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Inioluwa, what we're going to do for all our viewers is in the description below, put some of your details. So if people want to find out more, if they want to get in contact, that they can do that. So thanks again to our viewers as well. And please do like this video if you found it informative and helpful. Drop a comment below if you'd like to. And again, do check out the description below for more information on how you can find out about Inioluwa's work. All right, that's it for us. Thank you. Bye.